following is a clip from my conversation with social engineering expert and founder of the Innocent Lives Foundation, Chris Hadnagy. Do you find that most people who report are like legitimate, or like, what is the, I don't know, is there a percentage that are kind of just like you said, like they're angry about something else and they're just using this as an outlet?
Yeah. So I can't tell you a statistic, but I can say that a large majority of people who report, they're going through a divorce and they have no proof. So it's like, we can't find you proof, right? Like, we can help you get the proof. If you think he has pictures, we can tell you how to get them off the computer. If you can find proof, we can help you get it to law enforcement safely and forensically sound. But I can't hack his device illegally and get proof. I can't produce proof. I can't take someone's name. Like, you can't go on the dark web and search Chris Hadnagy and link it to a moniker. It doesn't work that way. So if you have emails and monikers that you think he might be using, I can go look on the dark web for that. But a lot of times people come and I know something happened and you don't have proof. We tell you, here's the steps. First, report it to local law enforcement. They'll start an investigation. Have your child forensically interviewed, right? That's important, because if a child discloses to a forensic interviewer, then they have to disclose that to law enforcement. But if the child sounds groomed, like you said, say that daddy did this, and there's no sign of that trauma, then no, and we'll tell them, like, no blame. Like, we don't try to say you should have done this, but like, if this happens again, you need to get your child to a doctor seconds after, because they can document and they're mandatory reporters, right? So when a parent comes to me and they say they did all those things, then I'm like, okay, let's help, because that, they wouldn't have went through all that if they were just looking to wreck this guy's life. But sometimes we'll even go as far as, like, let's just do a little digging in the guy. See, does he have a record? Has he done something like this before? Because that might help us see, like, okay, is this feasible? So we always take those seriously. But, we've had some real crazy ones. I mean, I had somebody call me and she was convinced that her husband was trafficking her teenage son. Her son won't speak to her. So what she did to get his attention was she went into the husband's yard and lit off M80s and then bashed his mailbox. And now... And she's like, and I want you to help me find proof. And I'm like, first of all, no, we're not going to be able to help you with that one. Sorry. We had another woman call and she literally had her whole room wrapped in tinfoil. I'm not even kidding. She got on camera. Everything was in tinfoil. And she's like, I know they're listening, so it's like, sometimes we get ones where it's really obvious, like, this is not what we do. I'm sorry. We help children get out of really bad circumstances, and the government spying on you is not our thing. So yeah, so we've had a few funny ones, but most of them are not.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, okay, you mentioned the dark web. What is the dark web? Like, I don't even know that I have the right definition, understanding of what it is.
Yeah. So the dark web actually started as a science project from MIT and the U.S. Navy. It was a way that they put together these private VPNs that then they could trade science papers, even in countries that were, banned from doing things like that. Quickly, though, the dark web was used by some MIT students to do drug deals. And then quickly after that, it got used for pornography, which seems to be everything that man makes gets turned to some kind of sex thing quickly. Nowadays, the dark web is, it's a massive, massive network of what they call Tor nodes. And those are just computers around the globe that are set up to connect to each other to this massive network of servers that hosts anything you can imagine: guns, drugs, humans, pornography, counterfeit money, hacking services. I would argue, besides whistleblowing websites, there's really not much good on there that I can think of. It's really not what it was created for, is not its intended purpose at this point in time. So it's where, because, and they have some validity to this, that there's a higher range of anonymity on the dark web, that people, that you're not tied to an IP address. Like, if you're sitting at home and you commit a crime, and let's say you hack into a bank and the bank says, here's the IP address, they can trace that back to you. But if you're on the dark web, they can't trace that back, because when you touch a Tor node, your connection breaks into like maybe 15, 20, 80 different Tor nodes, and it's broken up. So you kind of go out like this and then come back together. You are not attributable to one node, right? So now there's ways around that, but that's the reason why all this illegality exists. on the dark web is because there's a higher level of anonymity and much harder to catch somebody than there is on the open web.
Thank you for explaining to me like that. Have you read the book The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt?
No, I haven't. No.
Ah, it's fascinating. It
I'll add that to
it's
my
aligned
list.
it's aligned to what your work. The general idea is this. He's like, we apologies, Jonathan Haidt, if you hear this and I'm butchering this synopsis, but the general idea is we worry so much about kids' physical safety and not enough about their safety online. He's like, we worry about them getting kidnapped at the park, which is, hey, let's be aware of that. But then we give them a device and expose them to all
Hmm.
the potential. We open a window to a lot of really potentially, we raise their exposure infinitely. And anyway, book is phenomenal. I
Yeah.
definitely recommend it. And
I agree with that, though.
yeah,
I mean, we do spend a lot of time, and I think kind of like what we've been talking about here on the podcast, I think it's easier. I mean, a lot of parents nowadays have become like the iPad parents. Like, hey,
mhm,
you want your kids to stay occupied. Hey, you look at this, right? And
yeah,
then they've lost that communication touch to talk to them about these things, right? And I do think though that this younger generation, they're a lot more open to therapy than our generation was, and that I'm under the belief that everyone should have a therapist,
yeah.
because therapists, you could say things to them that you can't say to anybody else, and their job is to help you. I'm a big believer in that.
I agree. With this idea of devices, like it's hard to keep your kids all the way off of devices forever. You just can't. We know that's not going to happen. Do you have any thoughts or recommendations on devices that are out there that are a little safer or more easy to use, or things to stay away from?
Yeah. So again, I'm not saying I'm the rule set, but this is what we did in our family. My daughter was given devices and things were locked depending on her age, right? So we
Okay.
had a monitoring tool on her phone that blocked certain websites, blocked words, blocked that it turned it off at certain times. So like at 10 p.m. for bedtime, it no longer nothing worked but the clock and the audio, so she can listen to music.
Oh, nice.
We had all those things. And as she got older, we lessened those things, right? We lessened it. And then as she hit teenage years, of course, teenagers need their privacy. So
Hmm.
we had to lessen that even more. But we always had these conversations. So that way we felt that we weren't just giving her like, no, like Nick, let's look at this analogy. No parent in their right mind, when their child turns 16, would say, here's the keys, go figure out how to drive. We just wouldn't do it. They'd be
Yeah.
dead and they'd kill other people. But yet we're okay with giving them a phone at 9 with no guardrails,
Yeah.
right? And that phone is way more dangerous than the car, way more dangerous, right? So when we want our kids to drive, we take them out, we give them a parking lot, we make them drive slow. We might hire someone to train them how to drive. They got to do hundreds of hours behind the wheel before they have to have a permit for a year before they even are allowed to drive without you. And yet,
Yeah.
here's a phone. Be safe. The training process should be similar. And parents hear that and like, how the heck do I do that? And I'll tell you, I did this with my daughter where I wanted to know what she knew. So I would say, hey, Maya, I heard Instagram has this new thing called DMs. What does that mean? Oh, direct message. I'm like, how do you do it? She'd come over. Dad, you're so old. She would show me. Great. Now I know. She knows, right? And then I would say, so what would you use a DM for? Oh, if you want to like talk to one of your friends and don't want it to be public. I'm like, I would always ask her things. Hey, have you heard of this app called Snapchat? She's like, oh yeah, everyone uses it. I'm like, is it good? Like, what's like, what? I don't know what's up with this, right? And then she'd be like, well, and I was, I'm going to look into it. And I'd look into it and ask her questions. So what is this for your eyes only thing? Like, do you have that? And she's like, no, I don't use that. Oh, okay. Well, can I see? I'm curious because it's like weird. Show it to me. I don't have Snapchat, show me. I'd have her show me. I had her educate me on the apps. And that kept her also telling me what she knew and what she was using and let me have more knowledge than the average parent on these things. So,
I love that approach of it goes back to what, this is a theme now from hearing what you're saying. Focus on the relationship,
yeah.
really make sure that's strong, and then use the relationship to help keep your kids safe, keeping it strong as well.
And,
I love that.
look, every parent's going to mess it up. I mean, I can tell you a million things I did both for my son when he was young and my daughter that, are embarrassingly stupid. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm this like grandiose, awesome parent that never made mistakes. That is definitely not true. And either of my kids listen to that. Hope they appreciate me saying that. I know that, in the recent years, we've been able to self-reflect and really work on ourselves, my wife and I, and, just really be able to hone these things in, because the relationship building never stops with your kids. It never
Yeah.
stops.
Yeah.
My son is in his 30s and my daughter's in her 20s, and they're going to go through problems still. And I want them both to feel that they can come to us with that problem and we're going to listen, and we might disagree completely. We might not agree with the path you're deciding to take, but I'm going to listen. And if you want, I'm going to give you my 2 cents. And if you don't, then I'll still listen and just hear you out. But that's all I want from them, you know?
You have a unique, sure, nobody's perfect, but you have a unique perspective here in that, you're a parent and also you're focused on helping kids. What are some things that you wish parents knew about helping keep their kids safe that we haven't talked about already?
Yeah. So the first big one that we already did talk about is having those conversations with them. Like, you have to do that. The
Yeah.
second is being aware of what's happening to our kids out there. Like you were shocked when you hear like the average age of seeing pornography is 8 years old. Most parents don't know that. So they're like, no, that's not true. But yes, it's true, because one of their friends at school has a phone and looked up the word boobs and showed everyone in class because it was funny. Now, they might not be looking at it in a lustful way, but they're looking at it and they're seeing it. And when it starts that young, and the way, the reason pornography becomes addictive is it's like you could be with the same man or woman 30 years and never get bored. Why? Because there's this thing called oxytocin. So you have this building trust relationship that only is released with the physical touch or the person that you love with. You don't get that from a picture. So when you watch porn, you have dopamine, and the next time, it's kind of like the first time you rode a roller coaster. That roller coaster probably doesn't get you the same thrill anymore because it's old, it's boring. That's my first one. So when you watch porn, your brain dopamine, and now I need something different for that same dopamine and different. And what they found in studies is that most of the time, people who are into child pornography are porn addicts, because what has happened is I'm not saying every porn addict becomes a child abuser, right? I'm not saying that correlation is not there, but they started off looking at what you could call normal porn, of such a thing. And then they had to get into more hardcore porn, and then gangs, and then orgies, and then bestiality, animals. And animal and child porn seem to be very linked together. A lot of times when these guys get arrested, they also have animal porn in addition to child porn on their machine. And you imagine now, if somebody in our age group who couldn't even have access to porn until they were in their 20s when the internet was around, if now my kid at 8, he got a very short runway. By the time he's a teenager, or she, they're already addicted. And nowadays, I mean, I'm not saying it was better. Pornography has always been bad, but sound like I'm like a grandpa. Like in my day, it was literally like Playboy. It was just nude women, nude men. That was it.
This was a short clip from the 4Fs podcast, where I sit down with founders, veterans, and executives, world-class experts that you won't hear on every other show, to talk about leadership, entrepreneurship, and personal reinvention. For the full conversation and more context, tap the link in the description or search 4Fs podcast on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. And if you're enjoying these shorter episodes, make sure to follow along so you don't miss tomorrow's clip.
Welcome to the 4Fs with Jeff.